I'm trying something a little bit different this time with a sphere. I'm using the same oak as I did on the last sphere project, and this time it's still originally 3.5 inches, 90mm diameter, but I've made some inserts. The original piece of oak I've had to try and cut up on my table saw. Now the table saw cannot fit through the whole piece fully in one go, so it's usually a case of having to flip it over and cut the other side as well. The oak wasn't fully square, so it hasn't got the best cuts in here, and I've had to sand them down with a bench sander, which also really does need a new belt on it as well, so that didn't help either. The glue joints, they've all held really well, but on some of the edges there's a little bit of gapping, which I will deal with later on if they appear. Due to the way that the piece had to be all cut, I had to therefore couldn't have the piece too long. So as you'll see, I've used basically a couple of waste blocks that I've hot glued on the end. Now the hot glue is not a problem, it does really hold well. The only issue you have to be careful with is that if it heats up, then obviously it's going to become loose. And on this piece I've actually hot glued the entire surface where both parts are in contact with each other, so it shouldn't cause so much a problem. Especially on this right hand edge, as I have very little space to where I'm working on. I can actually cut part of the waste block down and not really interfere with the hot glue, just as long as I made sure that it wasn't getting too warm. Once I'd done all the initial shaping, I mean, I was really pleased the way this had all come out. It was then put it onto the jam chucks again, like I normally do. This time what I've done, I've used a piece of rubber with some self-adhesive backing to put onto the tailstock end. This worked really well, and I probably need to do something similar on the headstock end. Now for some reason this didn't round off so quickly and easily as I've found in past ones. Now it could just be that I've got the headstock to tailstock slightly out of alignment, so therefore every time you rotate the piece around it's putting it sort of slightly off centre every time. Something I've still got to look into properly. But eventually I get there, really pleased with the shaping in the end. Just like I say, it just took a little bit longer than normal. And I've got to say I was quite pleased the way that these inserts were showing through. Sanded down like I normally do through the grits, rotating the piece as you go along, and the gapping that I've got on there, I mean I had various ideas of what to do for this even before I started turning it. I mean I had thought about routing out the gaps and putting some other form of coloured woods in there to insert as a filler. But it turned out that these gaps were fairly small. Once you blew all the dust out of them, you could actually literally just about put your fingernail in where the gaps were. So I decided what I'd do, I'd just fill them with literally small pieces of dust I've got hanging off the edge of the lathe from the sanding, a bit of CA glue on there. And what I did first of all was I put some sanding sealer on first so that the CA wouldn't stain the wood. And once that had all hardened off, I then just resanded it all back down, re-put the sanding sealer on again, and then gave it a coat of Yorkshire grit. After the Yorkshire grit, I decided to use a paper towel in the headstock end just to make sure that there was not going to be any marking on this. And initially I gave it a coat of wood wax 22. While the wood wax 22 was sort of setting, because it's best to leave it a good 15 minutes before you put anything else on, I then found another piece of oak and decided to make some form of a base for it. A very quick and easy job, just sanded down through the grits again, a bit of sanding sealer, Yorkshire grit and wood wax 22. Once that was all parted off and finished, I just basically sanded off the bottom just to make it nice and flat. The sphere was then reloaded back in between the jam chucks, and I then gave it a coat of microcrystalline wax. So I'm really pleased with the final result. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you on the next project video.